Hi, and welcome to the SaVeg podcast. I'm Rose, and I'm a content creator going by the handle Cheap Lazy Vegan, and I also own a vegan cafe by the same name as the podcast, which is SaVeg Cafe.
And I'm Daniel, also a vegan, and one of your favorite guest stars on Cheap Lazy Vegan's YouTube channel.
We're two friends currently living in different countries, and we'll be giving our savage take on all things life, veganism, and the latest trending topics.
So basically, whatever comes to our minds, because we love to talk.
You are currently listening to the previous episode of this podcast, but if you would like to listen to this week's episode and get some exclusive content, go over to patreon.com/thesavagepodcast. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the SaVeg podcast.
Hey, guys.
Is my mic really loud, Daniel, or is it sounding all right?
I think it sounds perfect and beautiful.
Oh,
just
perfect.
Like you.
God damn. So today what are we doing, Daniel?
Today we are talking about something which we haven't talked about in a while, actually, on the podcast.
Veganism?
Veganism, yeah. So, I mean, as you know from the intro, Rose and I are both vegans. And I know a lot of you that follow us are from, Cheap Lazy Vegan's YouTube channel and from other, and Instagram and stuff. So many of you are vegans or considering veganism as well. So we thought this would be a perfect opportunity to share with all y'all, to share with you guys our kind of, I guess, vegan journeys and our stories, and let you guys know some of the reasons why we became vegan. Isn't that right,
Yes,
Rose?
it is very right. Good intro, Daniel. So we've been meaning to do this for a while, and we just kind of lost track. A lot of things happening in the COVID world.
Oh, God,
so we started talking about the COVID, the invisible enemy.
Yep, the COVID situation, and there's been so many things blowing up as well. Like you got the Tiger King, we had Love is Blind, we got everything going on right now. So.
And I think also because I talk so much about veganism on my YouTube and basically every other platform, so I think here is our my chance to kind of talk about other stuff.
Yeah.
But as you guys all know, veganism is a big part of me, my life. Mm-hmm. It's what I do for a living, basically.
Yeah.
So, and I'm very passionate about this. So let's talk about it. And we've literally neglected the vegan nuggets.
Yeah, we have. We have been very bad vegans on this podcast, because when we first started as well, we were like, we want to at least, because we want to talk about kind of general, everything in life on this podcast, right? Like everything that's going on, kind of current events, that kind of stuff. But we did want to bring part of it back to veganism as well. So in the beginning, we said, let's do at the end of every episode a vegan nugget. And I think we maybe did 3. And we're now on episode 24.
I know. Well, you know what? We'll just have to keep doing, once in a while we'll do a vegan related episode, maybe.
Yeah.
Something like that. I
think especially, well, I mean, veganism is always topical, to be honest, but I think especially with what's going on, I mean, have you noticed, a lot of the stuff that's going on with COVID-19, and talking about, the wet markets and everything else, a lot of these, viruses and pandemics, they're coming from animals, right? So, and our consumption of animals.
Exactly.
So they're causing a lot of issues.
It is very topical at the moment. Yeah, even with this COVID-19, even though the media, I'm sure, doesn't want to fully admit it. But it is true that because of the conditions in which, we can point to China all we want and the wet markets. But at the end of the day, factory farming, is it really that much better? Not really. We just don't see it as openly as a wet market.
Exactly. And I think, well, you have to look back at some of the other viruses and kind of mini pandemics, if you will, that have happened. And I know one of them wasn't it swine flu or something that originated in the States? And that was from pig farming.
From
pigs. So again, if we didn't consume those animals and we didn't have these factory farms, a lot of these crossovers, because they said, basically the crossover between animals and people, this is where, where there's a lot of interaction. This is where these viruses can mutate and cross species, right? So if we're farming and factory farming in these conditions with tons and tons of animals, the chances of the viruses jumping to a human and mutating in those kind of circumstances is quite high. So we're kind of almost not asking for it, but in a way, we're
100% asking for it, because people knew. That's the thing. It's this isn't something that happened out of the blue. Mm-hmm. People that actually, like we discussed before, people that actually study this, contagious infectious diseases, they knew that this was all very
100%.
Yeah. So we are pretty much asking for it. And what I'm afraid of is we're just going to go back when this is over, we're going to go back and it's going to be business as usual. What do you think, Daniel?
Unfortunately, I do have to agree with you on that point. I think, because the thing is, I think we as and I think I'm just as bad as everyone else for this. When something bad happens, like a pandemic or whatever else, or something in my life, I'm just using different examples, but we're a really quick species to forget about it. Do you know what I mean? Like it happened in the past and think, oh, maybe it's not going to happen again. Do you know what I mean? I feel like we're really quick to kind of move on and like try to continue. And I feel like, what am I trying to say? I just think the world is going to try to get back to exactly where it was before the pandemic. Well,
hopefully not. I'm hoping that we can learn a little something from this. And did you watch that video I sent you with Bill Maher?
You didn't send me a video with Bill Maher.
Yes, I did. You just didn't watch it. Do you even know who Bill Maher is?
No. I swear you did not send me a video with Bill Maher.
I sent it to you 100%.
Did you? What was the video about?
Let me check my WhatsApp.
I don't think you did, Rose.
I did. Well, you don't even know who Bill Maher is. How do you know if I sent it to you, Daniel?
Because I would know if you sent it to me. I would know who he is.
But you don't know who Bill Maher is. Let me check. I swear. I think I sent it in the our chat with Christelle.
Oh, shoot. I might not have seen it then.
Let's see.
Rose,
or maybe I didn't send it.
Rose trying to prove me wrong again. Oh, I really hope she didn't send it now, guys. Honestly. Just to be like, yes. 1 point. Let me check. Me.
Well, we talk a lot. I'm trying to scroll here,
Good luck. Literally, like it's gonna be
like
God,
there's so much conversation happening.
Can you type in the little box at the top where you can search for things?
Yeah, but I don't know what I wrote because I shared the. Oh, look, I did send it.
Let me see.
America's Wet Markets, real time.
Which chat did you send it to, Rose?
To our personal chat, so you have literally no excuse. I sent it right there.
Can you show me in the Skype as well so I can see
evidence? It's right there, and it's in that huge YouTube. It's not even just a link. It has that huge YouTube thing. Okay. And Daniel just chose to ignore it. Thanks, Daniel. Damn. Love it. See, I'm right. Ha! As always, I am right. So anyways, I sent you a video. It's called New Rule, America's Wet Markets, Real Time with Bill Maher. It even says his name. Great, Daniel. Look at that face of defeat.
Oh, God.
Love it. It's my favorite face to look at. Anyways, so Bill Maher is like I don't know what he is. He has a show. It's called Real Time with Big Mar. Big Mar, Bill Maher.
I was going to say, he has a nickname.
No, and basically he's like kind of like a political commentator. I guess that's how you would describe it.
Yeah.
And he's quite blunt in his speech. And I don't necessarily agree with everything he says, but he did this really good segment and it's called America's Wet Markets. And he basically talks about all the shit we're doing to animals and how, how like basically we asked for it essentially. Like we're doing all this like crazy shit with animals and then we expect nothing bad to happen. And he's saying, what we're doing now, we're all spreading out, we're all, socially isolating, we're all trying to maintain lower stress levels. And he's saying, well, think about a condition in a factory farm. It's literally, no wonder we get viruses from factory farms because all of those animals are extremely stressed out. They're confined in tiny, tiny spaces. They're all right next to each other. So of course it's, you're going to create so many, potential problems from that. And then he also talks about antibiotics as well.
That makes so much sense because if you look at even our current situation, like you said, the recommendation, and I apologize for not watching that, Rose. I'm sorry. Rose looks like she's pretty angry over there now. So
it's not the first time I'm angry with Daniels.
I'll be hearing about this later.
I'll send it to you again, Daniel. I'll send you a brand new, fresh link.
No, I can find it in the chat. I'll watch it. I don't know.
No, I'll send it to you again. I don't trust you to find it, Daniel. So, Grandpa Daniel has problems with technology.
I do not. Okay. Anyway, but what I was going to say is, it makes sense. Like if you think about it, we as a species of human, it's like, okay, well, if there's a virus or a pandemic and we're trying to stop the spread of it, mitigate the amount of, deaths and everything else, what do? We socially isolate, we distance from one another. And you're right. Those are just not the conditions that are in factory farms. So it's like a cesspool for germs, bacteria, viruses. And if one of the animals does get a virus, because they're not socially distanced, it's going to just spread like wildfire. You know what I mean? It's like there's not going to be, it could wipe out an entire factory farm or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you know why I
crazy.
sent you that video, Daniel?
Wow.
Do you know why I sent you that video?
No.
It's because he starts off by talking about Tiger King. He's like, stop asking me to watch Tiger King. He's just this guy that abused animals and now he's behind bars. Anyway, he ties it in with Tiger King a little bit. And basically, kind of says, why are people like not idolizing, but why are people not condemning this Joe Exotic guy for everything that he did? Like, he's not just in jail for conspiring murder, but he's in jail because of killing tigers, right?
Yeah.
That's partially why.
Exactly. And for illegally selling baby tigers as well. So
Yeah,
there's more
for doing
to
all
it.
kinds of crazy shit. Yeah, exactly. And oh my God, I saw this other video as well. I know, again, we're off topic, but bear with us. I'm sure you're used to it at this point.
Yeah.
So I saw this other video as well, and it was this guy that maybe I sent it to you too, Daniel, and you didn't watch.
I was gonna say, Rose, do you want to send it to me for me not to watch? Shit,
Guys, this is the kind of shit, here's the thing. Daniel acts like he's the only one being abused in this relationship, but actually, I get abused by, it's neglect.
I'm also abusive though. Like, I mean, not abusive, but like Rose sends me voice notes sometimes, and half the time she's like yawning in them and stuff, or like, sounds like she's so tired. So now every time she messages me, I'm just like, oh, are you still in bed? Just like poking the bear or whatever.
Poking the bear.
Yeah.
Anyways, this guy that apparently used to kind of work with Joe Exotic a little bit, and this other person interviewed this guy, and he told me, like, he was obviously this guy's just talking about his story, so we don't know if it's like 100% true, but I also feel like he wouldn't randomly lie about it, and he was just talking in like a small podcast, so it wasn't like national news or anything, but he was telling about his experience. He was actually living on the property for a little bit, and he's saying just like how horrible Joe Exotic was just to the animals, and how he treated the animals, just like he would just kill them like left, right, and center. Like, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was interesting.
I also heard like some other really random stuff. I can't remember if it was on that podcast that you sent me that I did listen to or somewhere else. But I also heard that like there was some weird thing that Joe had people like sodomizing or like doing something to the tigers as well, or there was something really like weird going on. Yeah. Again, I don't know if there's any truth to that, but I remember hearing that somewhere. But I heard that
I wouldn't put anything past Joe Exotic.
Yeah, I heard he was just a very unpleasant man, very, very temperamental, and just horrible to the staff and to the animals. So not somebody I would have wanted to meet, to be completely honest.
Yeah. But then what this guy said was that he was very charismatic. So he was very good at like manipulating you and, getting you under his spell, which is how he got like everything that he wanted, basically, and how he ended up in the situation that he did. Anyways. We're not going to do this about Tiger King today. We're going to talk about something else today, which is going vegan.
Yes. So, Rose,
shall I start?
As the professional vegan on this podcast, and as a vegan for a very long time, do you want to tell us kind of how the story and how you kind of started and began your vegan journey?
Damn, Daniel, you'll be a good interviewer. You'll be interviewing me.
Okay, I'm getting practice,
Okay, so I'll take you back, guys, to when I was a little girl. I was born in Korea, which, at least at that time, because I was born quite a long time ago, people.
You old.
I'll be old as hell. So I was born in Korea, and at that time, there was pretty much no such thing as vegetarianism even. I mean, at least as far as I knew. Obviously, I was just in my own little, circle, my own little bubble, if you will. And I didn't know anybody that was vegetarian. I didn't know it was a thing. And animal rights was not really an issue. And I just had no idea about any of this stuff. I moved to Canada when I was 8. And even then, I moved to Alberta, which is where Daniel and I both are from. Yeah. And Alberta is known for what, Daniel?
It's known for Alberta prime beef.
Yeah.
It's known for beef, and it's known for oil. It's like seriously, we are the Texas of Canada, okay?
Yeah. So they call Alberta the Texas of Canada. Alberta is the province. Yeah. And the reason why it's called Texas of Canada is because it's the most conservative province in Canada. Yeah. And also, we're known for oil and gas. That's the main industry here, which is why we're crumbling to pieces at this moment. Yeah. And also known for Alberta beef. So when you drive around like the rural areas of Alberta, you see just like a bunch of cattle, just like a lot of them. Anyways, so needless to say, I didn't know, again, any vegetarians, any, you know, anything of that sort. I ate meat. I ate all kinds of animal products growing up. So I had no idea that this was even, you know, a thing, you know?
Yeah.
So then I went into, I think what started was, well, I got my dog when I was 16 years old, my dog Minnie, who passed away a few years ago. Still very sad about it. Yeah. I think that was the first time I like really felt kind of connected to an animal, because before that I had never really. So it like made me realize that we're actually very similar in many ways. You know, you can see the little personality like shining through. Of course, we communicate very differently, but you can see them when they're sad, when they're happy, when they're, you know, when they're scared, when they're, you know, shy, whatever it is. You can see those little personality traits, and you can also see when they're like, you know, in pain or something.
Yeah.
So that was the first time I really opened my eyes to like, oh my God, like animals are really not that different. But again, I wasn't vegan or vegetarian at that time. And I think the next step was in university, I took a philosophy class.
Yeah.
And it was about moral issues. It was contemporary moral issues. And the main, there were a couple of different topics. There were many different topics actually that we discussed, like abortion, euthanasia, kind of, you know, controversial ethical topics. And the one that stood out to me the most, because I had never come across this topic before in terms of discussion, was animal rights. So before this, did I not tell you this story, Daniel?
I don't remember this part of it. No.
Oh, clearly you don't watch any of my videos. Continuing.
Well, if you send them to me, I definitely didn't watch them.
Touche, God. Oh. Anyways. So what was I saying? Oh, so I took the philosophy class, and before this I had just, you know, I'm a big fan of debating, you know, discussing controversial topics. So for someone like that to never have come across like a very controversial topic, it was very interesting for me, because before, you know, for example, abortion, I had talked to so many different people about that topic, you know, especially in like high school and stuff. I went to a Catholic high school, so this was a big discussion. And also, you know, even euthanasia, that was a discussion that we've had before. But animal rights, never have I ever discussed that from, you know, on any level. So I found that really interesting. So to do that in an academic setting was very interesting. And the professor, I remember, you know, basically the structure of the course would be that we would discuss the arguments for and against kind of, and just kind of compare and study, you know, to see what we can find. And the arguments for the animal rights argument just made so much more sense. And anything that the counter argument would say, there would always be a way to counter that from the animal rights perspective. It would be almost impossible to argue. So I don't know how much I want to get into this here, but one of the things that was discussed was a concept called speciesism, which basically is a term kind of similar to racism or sexism or homophobia, essentially, where basically you discriminate upon, like one group of people discriminates upon another group, right? So instead of people this time, we're talking about different species. So animals, one species discriminates upon other species, and also not just discriminating, but does things to basically, you know what I mean. What am I trying to say?
No, I get that. It's like how we've justified, for example, you know, dogs and cats, we're saying, oh, those are pets, but you know, pigs, chickens, that we've designated that species as food for us.
Yes.
So I understand.
Not just with amongst other animals, but we humans think because we're human, we are above all the other species, and we can, and that is the justification to do whatever we want with all the other species, because we're above it all. It's kind of like, you know, I'm white, so I am above all the other colors of, you know, all the other ethnicities. And what's interesting is that when you try to argue the speciesist, when you try to argue the argument that, humans are better than other animals, people like to use things like, we're more intelligent than other animals, or that we have more potential than other animals, you know, and all these kind of arguments. And they're very easy to argue. You know, for example, when you say we're more intelligent than other animals, then that would mean that every single human is more intelligent than every single other animal to justify the bad behavior that we're doing to the other animal. But that's not the case. There are humans that are less intelligent than other animals, but we don't treat them, you know, even nearly the same as we would treat animals in factory farms or anything like that.
Yeah.
And why is that even relevant in terms of discussing whether or not an animal deserves to live and
Or
be
die.
free? Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyways, so all of those discussions happened. I read a bunch of different essays and stuff like that. So I was like mind blown. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that,
Yeah.
you know, I've been living this, you know, lie kind of, because I'm like, oh my God, like this makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So I remember, but I had no intention of going vegan, but I think I had a bit of an existential crisis. Because I didn't know any vegans. I didn't even think at that time, I don't even think I knew vegan was a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I sure knew about vegetarianism. So I was like, oh, I'm going to try to go vegetarian for a week. So I went vegetarian for a week. And then I went back to my normal life. And it's very easy to just kind of go back into, you know, the normal life, essentially.
100%.
Like you said before, it's easy to forget and just kind of go along with the status quo because everyone around you is just doing that same thing.
Well, I also think too, with regards to like meat and stuff like that, I think that, you know, the way that it is packaged and served, you know what I mean? There's this whole degree of separation.
Disconnect.
So it doesn't seem like an animal anymore. Like, I know it's still an animal. Like, for example, if you're having a chicken or a burger or whatever else, but the way that it's cooked and presented and everything else, it's so far from the original animal that you don't connect the two. So it's easy for you to eat the burger. So it's easy to fall back into, you know, go vegetarian for a week, but then you go back to it because, you know, the burger, it doesn't look like a cow. It doesn't, you know, it's really easy to make that just like to separate the two, I guess, what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
Exactly. And we also like to use terms like beef or pork. We don't say, oh, I'm going to go eat some cow. We say that with chicken, I guess, but, you know, there are terms that kind of make it easier for us to, you know, consume those foods. And so anyways, I went back to, you know, my, you know, normal ways and, but that seed was definitely planted, as we like to say in the vegan community. We planted those seeds. Okay. So a few seeds have been planted and then and then I remember at some point in like my early 20s, I do remember writing down, like, you know, sometimes you write down goals of what you want to be in like at 25 or something. And I think one of them was like, I want to be vegetarian by this time or something. So I'm sure it's still stuck in my mind that I wanted to do this eventually. I think I just wasn't ready. And
it made
then
it made a real impact for you learning about, you know, animal rights. Like you said, it really, you know, it struck a chord and you were like, oh my God, like, you know, this is something that I never knew before. And it's pretty powerful.
Yeah. And I was telling myself, I was like, it was, I think people like to call it, there's a term for this, but basically it's very uncomfortable when you feel like you're a good person and you feel like, you know, you love animals, you're an animal lover and you know, you care about, you know, the suffering of these animals. Yet, you know, what I'm doing is in direct contrast to, you know, what I should be doing if I were to actually believe in those things. So if I believe that I love animals and I care if they suffer or not, then why am I directly, you know, contributing to that industry? Anyways, so because of that kind of uncomfortable feeling, I think is why I kept, you know, kind of coming back to this idea. And I remember, oh my God. So I remember, so I went to on my exchanges. I went to Italy, I went to Singapore, all that stuff, met a lot of different people. I think in Singapore, one of my friends was like a pescatarian. So, you know, just meeting different people and seeing like, because even when I was young, I never even knew vegetarian friends. Like I had no friends that were vegetarian. So, you know, to even meet people that were like living without eating meat, like that was, you know, quite eye-opening as well. And got back to Canada and I remember I was working at a cell phone shop and we were on campus, so it was very slow. I don't know why that shop even existed. Anyways, so I remember like I would spend my shift just like reading books or something, and I was researching this one. I don't know how I came across this book, but I was looking at it on like my computer, and my manager at that time saw me looking at that, and she was like, "Oh, I have that book." So the book was called Skinny Bitch. And I guess I wanted to lose weight because it was about like I thought it was like a weight loss book, and it like technically it was, but it's more of like a vegan book, as I come to find out. So it was kind of like talking about how like basically, okay, so she said she had this book, okay, so I was like, oh cool. She's like, yeah, I can lend it to you if you want. I was like, okay, sure. So she brought it, and I started reading it, and it was about kind of more of the vegan message, and I started reading it, and it started talking about factory farming and what happens in factory farming. And it kind of went into a bit of a graphic detail about, what happens to these animals in the different industries. So for example, in the egg industry, the male chicks get ground up alive because they're not of any use to the egg industry. And of course, the female chicks go on and live the same fate as the mother, which is horrible. And in the dairy industry, the calves get taken away from the mother because the mother needs to produce milk to, not for the calf, apparently.
Just to kind of digress just for 2 seconds. I think that, I mean, I had a few epiphanies, which I'll go into later, but that whole thing about the dairy industry, I had no idea, because in my mind, and the way they package it and the way they brand it, I never realized. And when you think about it intuitively, it makes sense. Like, obviously a cow has to give birth to a calf in order to produce milk. And basically that milk is meant for the calf. So if the calf is drinking it, it means that people can't, or there won't be enough necessarily to make, the supply that's needed. So obviously the calf gets removed. And that to me was like the biggest, like, why didn't I think of this before?
I know, right?
Yeah.
That's the crazy thing is, it's like some of these things are so obvious. Even the idea of, obviously we know where, technically we do know that the meat is coming from an animal. We know that. But until you actually really see what's happening and make those real connections, you don't actually know, like, you know what I mean? Like you said, because the way that it's packaged and the way that it's sold, it doesn't look like, the animal. You don't see the live animal. So I do feel like
butchered or anything.
Exactly. And also, with the dairy thing, that was like totally like mind fuck. I was just like, what? And you're right. It seems so obvious after you read it. It's like it's one of those things where before you read it, you don't think about it, but then after you read it, you're like, how come I didn't know this? Because it's so obvious.
Or how come I didn't think of it even?
Exactly. Because we're not forced to think about it. That's the thing. It's like, we're not forced to think about these things that are heavily ingrained in our system, that we just kind of live and go along with it until we are forced to actually question, okay, does this actually make sense? Why are we doing things like this? So the whole dairy farming was shocking to me in so many levels, because you don't think about when you just like have milk or whatever, you just think, oh, it's just like, it's just squeezed from the cow, like it's fine, the cow's not dying or whatever. But at the end of the day, there's so much suffering that goes on with that. And cows have a very, very strong bond to their babies. And it's apparently they cry for days after the baby is taken away, and it's very, very stressful. So anyways, read about all of this, but mainly I think I was reading about, the slaughterhouses and stuff like that. So at that moment, I think I read half the book and I was like, okay, I'm going to stop eating meat. So I remember I like made the announcement. I was like, I'm going to stop eating meat. And then I went home, told my parents, and my mom was like, oh, okay. I think they were kind of like surprised. I don't remember exactly what I said. I don't remember exactly what they said. They weren't like super opposed to it, because I think I didn't say I was going vegan. I just said, I'm going to stop eating meat. So that was the first thing I did. Okay. So I stopped eating land meat. I should be very clear. So I stopped eating.
So I was going to say you still ate fish for a little bit, right?
Yeah. So I started with the land meat, and then of course I started doing more research, because this is a world that I wasn't aware of yet. So this was also back in 2011, by the way, to give you a timeline. So back in 2011 was when I stopped eating land meat, and then I was doing more research, reading up more, learning more about dairy farming and all of that stuff. And I watched a movie called Earthlings, which is a documentary. This is what they call the vegan maker.
I still haven't seen it yet.
I know, Daniel, you're such a disgrace to vegans.
I
Okay, Daniel,
don't
we're going
watch
to have
it.
to watch it. We are going to have to watch it.
Send me a link, Rose.
Daniel, you know you're not going to watch it if I send you a link. We're going to, you know what?
Anyway.
We're going to do a vegan documentary night when you get back.
Okay.
We're going to watch a bunch of documentaries together.
Deal.
Hold on. So I watched Earthlings, and basically if you don't know what Earthlings is, it's a documentary where it kind of goes into the different ways of which we exploit animals. So it doesn't just talk about, the meat and dairy and the food, but it also talks about clothing and entertainment and all of the different ways that we use and exploit and basically abuse and torture animals, essentially.
Yeah.
So I remember watching that and I cried so much. I don't think I've ever cried. I don't think I've ever cried that much watching anything. I literally probably went through an entire box of Kleenex. I was like bawling my eyes out. It was just so sad to see. And then I remember after watching that, I decided, okay, no more eggs, no more dairy. So I quit those two things. But for some reason, I couldn't cut the fish. I was like, I think it was psychological in a sense, because I couldn't. It was almost like, I don't know if you felt this, Daniel. I'm sure we're going to talk about your story in a bit. But I felt like I was almost maybe losing my identity fully when I was cutting out all of these foods. So I thought maybe I could hold on to one last thing.
I also think with fish, I don't know what it is, because fish is the last thing that I got rid of as well. I feel like, and this sounds, again,
we can't empathize with them.
Exactly.
As much.
It's harder to empathize with a fish because with cows and pigs and all of this, it's a lot easier because I guess this is speciesism though, because they're on land, we can relate to them, we're used to seeing them, whereas like fish, they just seem like, you know what I mean? Like there's more of a disconnect there. Yeah.
There's more of a disconnect. So that's why. Yeah, that's probably the biggest reason why, to be honest, is, I think there's multiple layers, but you're right. It's because I always say that too. The reason, and it's not an ethically justifiable one, but it's because we relate to those that are similar to us. And same thing this is probably why all of these, discriminatory behaviors exist, because we empathize with those that are most similar. So maybe it starts with, our race, the people that are, white or Asian, maybe we can relate to them more, so we can empathize with them more. And then of course it goes to gender, and it also goes to, so whatever we're less familiar with, we're less empathetic toward. So fish,
which makes sense.
It does make sense, 100%. So again, it's not a justification, but because we were, it's harder to relate to a fish. So I think that's why. So anyways, I gave up basically every animal product except for fish. So I kept calling myself a pesca vegan. Not a thing, guys. because I wasn't just a pescatarian. It was hard for me to describe myself because I wasn't eating dairy or eggs. So, a pescatarian, I think, is like a vegetarian that eats fish.
That is exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. But because I wasn't eating dairy or eggs, I was like, how do I define myself? But anyways, not important. So then I was a pesca vegan.
Yeah. A pesca vegan. I like it.
Yeah. So I was still eating fish, and I thought I could never give up fish. I just thought I could never give this up. And surprisingly, the other stuff was very relatively easy for me. Like the meat, I literally, after that moment of being like, I need to stop eating meat, I haven't eaten meat, at least knowingly eaten meat since. And that was back in 2011. I cut it out and I thought I could never live without meat before that. Yeah. So anyways, gave up everything but fish. And then that was in 2011 still. And then I basically was a pescatarian / pesca vegan for like 3 years, I think. And then, but I think slowly, as I was, again, learning more and learning more about veganism, the vegan arguments, I think I knew ethically that vegan was the right choice. I think I just mentally couldn't make that step forward.
Yeah, I was going to say interesting, because I can't remember what year. I think it was 2013 or 2012 that we did our trip to Montreal. And I don't remember. We went to a lot of vegan restaurants, didn't we, in Montreal and Quebec City. So I guess, because I don't remember you eating fish at that time, but I guess you might have been still consuming fish. But I don't remember.
Yeah. So so I think a few reasons why I was still eating fish, I was still living at my parents' house. So because, when I told them I was quitting dairy and eggs, they kind of like freaked out a little bit because they thought, because we've always been told that we need to eat like, the dairy products or the eggs to be healthy and stuff. So of course my parents were concerned about my health. So they thought like, oh my God, like, do you really have to quit like dairy and eggs? What is happening to your lighting?
Oh my God, my lighting is going insane.
Oh my God, Daniel's... Okay.
It's okay now.
Can you imagine if it just went pitch black right now?
Oh God.
Oh my God, your house. Anyways. So, so that's one reason why, just to kind of like, because I was still living at home and my mom was doing most of the cooking, I can empathize with people that live at home and want to go vegan. It's not as easy as, it sounds, because you have other people that are potentially cooking for you and other people that are influencing you. But anyways, so that's partially the reason. Second reason, that's partially the main reason why, because I was still living at home. But slowly, as I was, learning more about veganism, I wanted to eat more vegan. So when I was out, I usually ate like mostly vegan stuff. And I wasn't like trying to eat fish in every meal. So I would eat lots of vegan and plant-based meals. And I think when I was in Montreal, I actually was pretty much vegan at that time. I was eating like a plant-based diet. I didn't really eat fish. And so slowly
Sorry. I was sorry to cut you off there. I was just going to say on a side note, because I really enjoyed some of the places we went to in Montreal. You remember that place that was like, I can't remember.
Vive. Vive. Oh, so good.
So good. But what I was saying is one thing that we should do in the next, like, obviously not right away, but like when I'm back in Calgary, we should like do some trips and do like vegan food tours of like Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, because the vegan scenes there have like blown up, I think, or gotten a lot bigger. And like I always see like things 100%. About like certain places in Toronto where I'm like, oh my God, I want to try this place.
Toronto is so good. Toronto has so much. Like I couldn't even. I would love
to go there.
Yeah, I was there a few years ago and I couldn't even go to all the places because there was just so much. So I could only I went to a lot. Don't get me wrong, but there were some places I missed. And there's so much. We should definitely do a vegan trip.
Yes. Okay. Anyway,
oh God,
sorry.
We're going to get so fat. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah. So, so I was like slowly, like I was still eating lots of vegan stuff, but sometimes eating the fish. So I wasn't fully ready to identify. That's another thing. It's like the identity thing. It's like, oh my God, am I ready? Because calling yourself vegan is like a big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, am I ready to call myself vegan? Am I ready to make that step forward? Because like once you call yourself vegan, it's hard to come back from that. You know what I mean? It's easy to kind of like climb up that way and slowly make your way.
Yeah. Do you think that part of it, why you might have had that identity where you're like, you're not quite ready to take that leap is because like, and this is my experience, but like a lot of the vegans that I did know or had met were really extreme and really like, not extreme, but like, because I looked at my group of friends and how I want to fit into society and everything else. And vegan does go slightly against that. But I think there's a way to go about being a vegan and still maintaining a social life and everything
normalcy
else. Exactly. So I think that might have been a stepping block as well to think, oh, I'm ready to, like, I want to be a vegan. I want to call myself a vegan, but I don't want people to think of me differently either. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I'm trying to think. I think, partially, yes, because I think that it was more for me. It's more like, I don't think I minded people thinking of me differently slightly because I was always pretty outspoken and I didn't really care that much. But it was more so that I didn't really feel like I fit in with any group at that point. Because I'm like, I don't really fit in with the vegans because I'm not really vegan. And I also am not like, living in a forest and eating bananas and mangoes all day. But I'm also like some people.
Savage.
And I also don't ride a bicycle. And I'm also, I also drink alcohol, which a lot of vegans don't do. And especially at that time in the YouTube vegan scene, it was like a lot of raw vegans, just like, I didn't associate myself with them fully. And also I didn't really associate myself with the non-vegans either because of, what I knew already. So I was kind of like in this in-between stage of, I don't really fit in with any of these people. So like, where am I? So it was like definitely like an identity crisis in that sense.
Yeah.
So then anyways, But then anyway, yeah, so I was eating more vegan food. I was definitely more and more inclined toward going vegan. So when I moved to London, which was in 2014, June of 2014, I went on my working holiday to London for 2 years. And when I went, that's when I decided, okay, now that I'm on my own, okay, so one of the barriers is gone.
Yeah.
I am going to start eating vegan. And at that point, I had already eaten so much vegan food. And I think I had already kind of convinced my parents that like, I'm not going to die eating a vegan diet, because I slowly warmed them up to the idea as well. Because as time went on, I ate more and more plant-based. And then they got used to me eating plant-based. So when I told them, okay, I'm going to be vegan when I go to London, or I think when I went there, I just told them, and they're like, oh, okay, like make sure you're healthy, all that stuff. But they weren't super against it. So that's when I went vegan in June of 2014, which makes almost 6 years.
God damn, Rose. That'd be quite the story. That'd be quite the sensation.
And almost 9 years since I've eaten lamb meat, dairy, or eggs. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. That is a very, 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 very long time.
It's a very long time. So that's my story. Daniel, would you like to tell yours, or do you have any questions for me?
Well, I have a question. So, obviously you said one of the barriers was like we say barriers lightly, but like obviously living with your parents and stuff because your mom was doing a lot of the cooking. Then you left and you said, okay, you know what? I'm on my own, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to fully go vegan. Did you find when you moved back to Calgary, was that a difficult transition, or did you kind of, at that point you were like, nope, this is, how I'm eating now? And
at that point, because I was in London for 2 years. So, at that point, I had fully basically identified myself as vegan, and I did actually visit a couple times when I was living in London, back to Canada. But at that point, I was fully there, so there was no turning back.
True.
So my parents were, again, like they were supportive at that time. So
see, that's good. That's helpful. It is helpful when you have very supportive parents, And did you find, I guess, one of the things too is like, especially in London, like I found the thing with London is, one, there's so many vegan options, and also there's so many vegans in London, right? Because it's a big city, it's very vibrant. Did you find also, in some ways, moving back to Calgary's a great city, don't get me wrong, but did you find it a little bit frustrating in regards to not as many obviously vegan options, and also like I would argue there's there is less vegan individuals or people that think along those lines in Calgary? Did you find that a challenge and continue to find it a challenge?
I still continue to find it a challenge. Because, obviously also because I have my certain set of friends here that I've been friends with for a long time. And, it's kind of like this, it almost feels like moving back to a small town in a sense. Like, when, let's say you were born in a small town and then you have people that grew up in that small town. And I'm not saying this is a small town, but I'm just using it as an analogy of like, you grow up in the small town and everyone kind of thinks a certain way and everyone has a certain way of life, and people don't necessarily think outside the box. But then you move somewhere and then you meet all kinds of different people that have maybe some alternative lifestyles or whatever, and it kind of opens your mind up to different things. And then you move back to that small town and then you're like, I don't fit in here really anymore. And I've always felt like I don't really fit in this city in terms of the way people think and stuff. And I think with the vegan thing even more so, because especially living in a place like London where it's such a big city, and you're right, there's so many different vegan options, and also lots of different people that are vegan. Like the vegan community there was huge, and it was getting bigger and bigger.
Exactly. But I think also it's an interesting one, because like you said, remember you were saying before when you were growing up, you didn't know anyone that was vegetarian, let alone vegan. You didn't even really know the term vegan until you got a bit older, right? Like, I mean, and I speak from my own experience, like until you actually went vegan, I don't think I'd really heard too much about it. Like, especially growing up in Calgary, I had friends from a very young age that were vegetarian. My grandfather was vegetarian for a period of time, so I was familiar with vegetarianism. Yeah. But veganism, I didn't even know it existed. And I know until I probably moved to the UK and you went vegan, and you're the first person that introduced it to me, because before that, I don't think I'd even heard of it, to be honest.
Yeah, me too. And it's funny because somebody asked me on Instagram, they were like, what did they say? They were like, were you the first vegan in your family? And I was like, I was the first vegan I knew ever.
Yeah.
Like personally, I didn't know anybody. When I went vegan, nobody was vegan. Like I was not, nobody was vegan. Nobody around me was vegan.
Exactly.
So again, we were in this kind of, you know, like bubble in a sense, because obviously there were vegans. It wasn't as big during that time. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like didn't know any vegans when I went vegan. So I was not familiar with veganism, and I wasn't, so, and I'm sure I'm the first vegan that most of my friends know, you know? So
that's true. You were the first vegan I knew. So,
oh, God damn. I'll be starting the trend.
You starting the trend.
So it's definitely, you know, that's definitely one of my complaints about living here where I do. I think, you know, things have shifted a lot.
I was going to say it's changed quite a bit since the
100%.
last couple times I've been. And I'll be excited to be moving back and being with you, and we can be the vegan trailblazers.
Yeah. Well, I hope I can open my cafe again, you know, feed the peoples.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah, there's more vegan options for sure. There's, you know, the word vegan is popping up a lot more. It's definitely it's slowly becoming, okay?
Like a norm. It's becoming a norm, starting to.
And now people are recognizing the word vegan more, you know, thanks to, I think, social media, the internet, all of that good stuff. So,
I was shocked. I was shocked just when I went recently, because I visited Calgary. I was back for a wedding this summer that just passed, and I was shocked just going around and literally even like there's a little local cafe that my friend wanted to do like a kind of after wedding brunch at, and we all went there and they had vegan options, and I was like, this is like a little like cafe or like a kind of sports bar kind of place. And I was shocked. Like literally everywhere that I went had at least one, even though it was usually a Beyond Burger, but you know, it had an option, you know, I was like, yes.
It's better than nothing, you know?
Exactly. So it's something that makes it a lot more accessible. And I think that makes it easier as well.
All right. Shall we go into your story, Daniel?
Yeah. Well, my story is nowhere near as long as yours. Mine's short and sweet.
Mine was very long. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah. But I think yours is different than mine in a lot of ways, because like you said, you were the first person that you knew around your circle of friends that went vegan. For me, I feel like it was a bit easier in some regards, because through you, I knew you as a vegan, but then I also met a lot of other vegans. So it wasn't something that was so different for me. Like, so, you know what I mean? Shocking. And like, yeah, I did have like quite a few friends that were vegetarian growing up, all this kind of stuff. So it wasn't as big of a shift. A lot of stuff, though, I learned along the way. And I think it's an interesting one, because you mentioned about how you went vegetarian for like a week after that course or whatever. It's so funny. I also dabbled in I call it dabbling, but like in vegetarianism a few times while I was growing up. I don't remember the exact ages, but I remember they were just really terrible attempts. I say attempts because like, I can't even remember why, but my parents always make fun of me about this, but I remember there was one time I went to my parents and I was like, look, I really don't want to be eating meat anymore. I want to, you know, be vegetarian.
Do you know how old you were?
I think I was around, I want to say like 14 or 15.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And I talked to my parents. I think they probably know the exact age. I can't exactly remember. And basically, I think I lasted like a day or two, and then my parents were making like bacon and eggs for breakfast or something, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll have. And it's so pathetic when I look back, but it just shows that I was already starting to think about it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then I went a long, long time not really thinking about it that much, and then it was kind of in the back of my mind. It's always kind of, not always, but like for a long time, it's been in the back of my mind, just thinking about animal rights, what really goes on. Do I feel okay eating an animal? But again, I think that the way that it's packaged and the way that it, like, you know, even like you said about the way that we call like burgers and things like this, they make it seem so distant from animals. So it's harder to make that connect that this is actually a cow that I'm eating. This is actually a pig, everything else. And then it's a weird one for me, because it was almost like a switch that happened for me. And it was also when I moved to the UK. I did my first year at Newcastle University, and I remember distinctly. I went into a Subway, and I think I've said this story before. So I went into a Subway and I ordered this like sub. I was a student at the time, and I got this like, it was like the cold cuts combo or something like this. And I had literally, I think I had just watched some video that you had sent me about like factory farming. It was like a short thing on YouTube, I think.
Oh, you watched a video I sent you?
Well, I used to back in the day. Not anymore. Seriously, guys, I'm scared for after this podcast. I'm going to get a phone call. And yeah, so I had this sub, and I'd like literally just watched a video about factory farming. And I remember sitting in the subway about to eat this sub. And then I just remember like it just flicked like a switch, and I was just like,
what?
Yeah, I was like, I don't feel right about this. I honestly just don't feel good about eating this, and I don't want to eat this. I don't want to eat this sandwich. And I know this sounds stupid, but I like didn't end up eating it, and I threw it out, which is a waste of food. I know, but I remember distinctly this happening, and I was like, okay. And to be fair, up until this point as well, I was only cooking vegetarian meals in my house because I don't like cooking meat either. I would only get it when I went out. So like when I was in Newcastle, I never like I wouldn't, and I also was scared of undercooking meat as well because like you have to be careful with like chicken and pork and all this. So I just was like, I'm not going to cook it. Anyways, sorry, I digress. And after that, I was just like, no, I don't want to eat. I don't want to eat meat anymore. And I think I texted you actually. I'm pretty sure I texted you like that day or the next day.
I remember you did not tell me. I swear you didn't tell me that you weren't eating meat for like a month.
Yeah.
And maybe because like you were feeling, you didn't feel like you were 100% maybe. So you let me know about like a month later or something. And you were like, I haven't eaten meat in like a month. And I was like, what?
Yeah. But it was such a weird thing for me. Again, it was like I was also having like a kind of identity crisis in some way because this whole time I'd been eating meat and it's never really thought too much about it. And then also I probably waited to tell you because I'd also realized in the past I've tried to do this and I just never succeeded. So I was just like,
you didn't want to flip flop.
Exactly. I didn't want to be like all over the place. I also still ate fish at this point, like seafood and stuff. And then basically that continued. So that was, when was that? That was 2016.
Was it?
2015.
Yeah.
And then end of 2015, I moved to London and me and Rose started living together, which was amazing. And
so you were pescatarian, eating dairy and eggs at this point, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was I was pescatarian.
Yeah, you're pescatarian. Yeah.
And then I moved in with Rose, and to be honest, like Rose would cook a lot for us, or we would cook together. So basically, already there, I was eating so much vegan food. To be honest, like, and then when I was going out, I'd obviously just get like vegetarian meals and stuff. And then I remember we went to we went to Veg Fest, right?
Yes.
And there was a promotion going on, which was Veganuary, go vegan for the month of January. And Rose turned to me and she was like, Daniel, do you want to try this challenge or something? And I was like, yeah, why not? Let's do it. Because I was pretty much eating mostly vegan at this point anyway, because of living with you. And then did it for the month of January. Felt really good. Watched some I think I watched some documentaries. I watched like Cowspiracy and a few others. Or maybe that was later. I can't remember. And
I feel like you watched Cowspiracy and that's one of the reasons. I thought that was one of the reasons why you stopped eating meat, or was that not?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. I think Cowspiracy was definitely a little bit later. Because then I realized more of the like environmental impacts, and that's when I went vegan. I think I was already vegan at that point. God, I can't remember the exact order of this story.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, so January, it would have been January 2016 that I became a vegan.
Oh, God damn.
So yeah, that's pretty much my story. That's it in a nutshell.
It's
crazy. And I think that it's interesting. Like when I look back, the only thing that was, I think, the harder of the things, again, the meat, the actual like land meat, if you want to call it that or whatever, that actually wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Like that was quite easy. The harder things for me to give up, or the hardest, was definitely cheese. And then the hardest, surprisingly, is the fish. But I think it's because like I used to love seafood, like sushi and all this stuff. So I did find that difficult. But yeah, that's pretty much my story.
And how do you feel now about the cheese and the seafood? You can be honest.
I still kind of miss. Seafood is one that I still miss. I think because as delicious as a lot of like the vegan, like kind of
fake stuff.
As good as it is, I feel like fish is one thing that it just hasn't, it's not quite there yet. You know what I mean? With the flavors and everything else.
Yeah. The what do you call it? The technology is not there yet.
Exactly. Yes. So I think that's the one thing. I mean, I think actually cheese now, the vegan cheeses are getting a lot better. So I think actually that's not such a big thing for me, but definitely the fish. That's the one thing that when I look back, but again, I don't want as an ethically, I don't want to eat it. Right. Like, and both ethically, but also there's a lot of other concerns around fish with regards to like plastic pollutants in the ocean and all the, the microplastics and stuff. So I also don't want to be ingesting that. So there's more to it than just, but strictly speaking on flavors and that kind of stuff, like that's the one thing. But it's surprising. There was a lot of things I thought I would miss when I went vegan. Like just like simple things that at the time I was thinking, oh, I really like my lattes and everything else, like little things like this.
Like, how can I give this up? I can't give this up. That feeling.
Exactly. And I was thinking, oh, and then, actually when I started having like soy lattes, oat milk lattes are so good. They are the best. Honestly, they are so good. And I was like, why did I think this was going to be a big, a hard thing to do? You know what I mean? So that's kind of my little
Well, that's
vegan.
the thing. It's like, I think, so much of it is psychological. We're very attached to our food emotionally. Yeah. So we think, oh my God, if I give this up, I can never eat it again. It's that idea of, you just get scared almost. And that feeling was so real, especially for me with like fish and sushi was like my thing. I was like, oh my God, I can never eat sushi again. And don't get me wrong, like you said, if there's one thing I don't know if I miss it, because I'm not like every day, I'm not like waking up being like, I wish I could eat this. But like, if I think about just the flavors, like I do miss it in that sense. But it's very easy. How do I say this? We can quickly forget about it, essentially. Yeah. Like, I don't wake up and think, I want sushi every single day. And I'm not like craving it. Exactly. But if they came up with, a fish alternative that was like very believable, then like, I would eat it, Definitely. So yeah, it's crazy how much we think we can't give up on these foods. But then once you make that decision and do it, it's actually not that big of a deal.
Yeah. And the thing is too, again, like, also though, to help with that, to help people give up these, products, there are some especially now, there is some really, really good vegan restaurants, but also really good vegan not supplements, but like, alternatives. So like, for example, like if you love barbecuing and your burgers and stuff, the burgers that they have now, the vegan burgers,
the Beyond Burgers,
but there's also the Impossible Burger as well. And there's
have you tried it?
Yeah, they had, pretty sure they had it in London. I'm pretty sure I did. And honestly, these, oh my God, why do I want to say supplements? These alternatives or vegan alternatives to these things are so good that you have to question, like, why do I need to eat a beef burger? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, these are actually so flavorful and so delicious. It just doesn't, it doesn't make sense. So like those kind of supplements can really, really help people, I think.
Alternatives.
Oh God, why do I keep saying supplements? God I don't know. Damn.
Well, okay, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So what did your parents think when you told them?
I think, to be honest, they were okay with it. Like they were actually quite supportive as well. Okay. And I didn't tell them right away. I waited for a little bit as well because I didn't want to just be like, again, flopsy flipsy or whatever. I mean, at first they were a bit like, not concerned, but they were just kind of like, again, more like nutrients wise, like, are you going to get enough like nutrients and everything else? But like, no, ultimately they were pretty supportive. Even when I went back home, because I know I went back for another wedding. I go back for so many weddings. And I remember my mom was like really, really like keen to like make some vegan recipes, and they had bought like a bunch of soy milk and like some alternatives. And they do that every time I come back now. They're always like stock up on like random like tofu and like all kinds of stuff. So they're very, very supportive.
I mean, it's very good that we have supportive parents, but I feel like this is not very good for people that want to hear how we overcame such,
That's
difficult
true.
Parents.
This is true. I mean, I think
like some people have a really hard time with their relatives being very, unsupportive.
Yeah. That would be so challenging. Cause I mean, I've just lucked out. Like even my like aunts and uncles and everyone, like no one, really batted an eyelid, and they were just like, okay, cool. Like Daniel's vegan. Like it is what it is, So yeah, I think that's a hard one because I could see if I was living, especially if I'm living with my parents, it's not so bad if you're like moved out of your parents' house, but if you're living under their roof or with relatives and they're not as supportive and they're the ones that are buying the groceries and cooking all the meals,
exactly,
that can be a real challenge. Because
Yeah.
I've never personally experienced that. So that would be really, but I imagine that would be challenging.
Yeah. Do you think that going vegan made you a better cook?
Yeah, that's a good one, actually. I think it's made me, I don't know necessarily a better cook, because I'm not actually, well, I'm okay. I'm not the best cook, but I'm all right. But I think it's definitely made me more, I like to say I'm a more creative cook, because with vegan, there's a lot of times I actually like cooking vegan food, because obviously for me, I always try to mimic dishes that I used to like. Sometimes I'll have a craving, like, oh, I really want some nachos, or I really want some mac and cheese, or I really want some like creamy pasta. And then it's kind of an adventure, because then you're like, ooh, how am I going to make it? And then you kind of test it, so I feel like it's it's a different cooking experience, I think. And it is a bit fun, because you have to try to play around with stuff to try to make it similar to what I was used to before, I guess. So,
and it's so good when you do succeed.
Oh God. Yeah. What about you? Do you think that veganism has made you a better cook overall?
I think, well, I mean, it's hard to say, because obviously one big factor was that I had my YouTube channel.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But even before, so when I went pesca vegan.
When you were pesca vegan.
And I was living with my parents still. So before that, because my mom cooked, and my mom's a really good cook, so I didn't really cook much. And
Your mom's an amazing cook.
Yeah, she's amazing. So I never cooked much, and I was not really that interested in cooking. But I think when I started to experiment with vegan stuff and I started learning about vegan food, I actually became interested in trying out different recipes. So I would bake and I would try out random, again, this is before, even when I was still eating fish, I would still try out a bunch of different recipes, which I never really did before with meat. And, I was just not really into cooking. So it definitely made me more interested in cooking. And you're right. Like, it introduced me to, different ways of cooking that I never thought about before. So yeah, it definitely made me more interested in cooking. And now I'm obviously, that's what I do. So
I was going to say, as someone that has tasted Rose's cooking over the years, I can concur that you have become a much better cook. Not that you were ever a bad cook.
The shade.
The shade. Like,
I know, I do. When I see my old, even my old videos, I'm like, oh God, why did anyone follow me? This looks horrendous.
Yeah. I just remember in London, when we were living together, don't get me wrong, you made some good stuff, some good food and stuff. But fast forward now to when I come visit you in Calgary, and the food that you cook now is just so flavorful and so good. And it's you have definitely come a long way.
Yeah, I've learned a lot over the years, and before I was not really, and I even said in the beginning, I'm I'm definitely not a cook, just this is just for easy shit that, and even now I'm not 100% confident, but I'm definitely more confident to if people are coming over for dinner, I'm confident I can make something that tastes good, know? So that's interesting.
I know one video that I've watched a few times now of yours that you've recently posted that I'm I seriously, my mouth waters.
I know
every
which
time
one.
I see it.
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Creamy kimchi udon.
Yes. Oh gosh. Honestly, Rose, I need to make it when I'm in Calgary, or we need to make it together.
I'll make it for you.
Oh,
it's so easy. All you need is kimchi.
I know.
All you need is kimchi, which takes days to make.
Exactly. Well, I've made kimchi before. I know the process, and it is one hell of a process. Let me tell you.
It is one hell of a process, but it's so.
But the results are so good. Yeah, the results are so worth it. And the thing with kimchi, which I made it when I was in London a few times. I haven't made it since I've been in Spain, because it's I'm just in a really ghetto house right now, and things are not. Yeah. When I get back to Calgary and have my own place, I probably will. But once you make the paste, because the paste is once you get that paste and you have it and you can just. Then
that's my mom's method of freezing it.
It works so well though, because I remember I froze a bunch of the paste in the freezer, and then when I needed to make it again, it's a lot faster. So yeah.
Anyway, if you guys need a kimchi recipe, a vegan kimchi recipe, you can check out my video. Go on YouTube and search Cheap Lazy Vegan Kimchi. You'll find it. I have another question for Daniel though.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Because again, I could have sworn that you said you went vegan for environmental reasons. You've said this before. So tell me a little more about that.
Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure, no, like initially when I went vegan was for Veganuary. That was the main kind of thing. And I continued on. But what reinforced my veganism was the environmental side of it. And I think although the ethical side is just as important, you know what I mean? It's huge. There's a huge ethical element. The thing that resonated more with me for whatever reason, and this makes me sound a little bit like a dick because like obviously the ethical part is so important as well. But I think the reason it resonated with me so much is I think this is part of the thing for you with the animal rights is I was so blind to it up until this point. So that environmental aspect for me was such a huge eye opener. Like it was like literally, it was like one of those moments where I was just kind of like, how is this not more widely known? Like, how did I not know that, you know, the environmental impacts of animal agriculture is so huge, and that if we, you know, all the feed that we have to grow, that we have to produce to feed the cattle and the pigs and everything else, and the water consumption and just the drain on resources, I had no idea. And again, it's one of those things where it's like with the dairy industry removing the baby cows and stuff. It's something that is common sense. Like I should know, you know, you grow a cow, what do you need? You need food and you need water, right? So, and both of those take resources. But it's kind of like, again, bringing it all together and thinking, holy shit, actually this is huge. Like this is huge. And
what causes one of the things that causes the problems is the farts from all the
methane all the gas, livestock. Right? Yeah.
That's fucked, man.
I know. It's it's insane. And again, it was one of those moments where I was just like, why? It was almost, I was a bit frustrated as well when I found this out, because I'm like, why didn't I know this before? Why am I learning about this when I'm like 26, 27? Why isn't this something that's kind of like, you know, part of the education process when we go through school to learn about factory farming, its impacts? Like, because, you know, I remember going through school, I'm sure that we've done hundreds of papers in social studies about environment, taking care of the environment, doing all this stuff. And it's like, for me, it was like, why isn't that on there? Do you know what I mean? Like, why isn't that something that we've learned about in school? It was just really shocking. And I think that's, it reinforced everything for me. And it was kind of the main thing that like really resonated with me, I guess. Because the factory farming and all of that, as you know, you kind of do know underneath it all, even though a burger's a burger, in the back of your mind, somewhere, you know, okay, this did come from a cow, right? You know, there's that process there. That wasn't such a big
shock.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. I mean, it still was when you see some of the footages and stuff. You're like, holy, you know, it's not as nice.
Yeah,
well, I never thought
not as nice.
I never thought a slaughterhouse would be nice, but it's just the environmental one that was just. I was shocked. I was in shock that like we weren't didn't know about this. Yeah, why? Yeah. Like, and almost angry as well though, where it's like, why is this something? Because you know. One, I might have made these decisions sooner in life, but also this is something that when you make a decision, you should know all of the impacts of that decision, right? So like, I should be able to know, like I should have known what was going on. If I choose to eat a burger, I'm choosing to eat a burger, but I want to know everything that's behind that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to know what I'm putting into my body and what destruction that it's doing. So I don't know. That for me was the biggest kind of, I don't know. Did you know, like before you know, became vegan and everything else, did you have an inkling or did you know a lot about the environmental impacts, or was that something that you learned? I had
absolutely no idea. I had no clue. And I don't even think, I just had no idea. Didn't even think about it. It's another one of those things, like you're right. No wonder, you know, some people don't trust government, establishments, all these things, because this is one thing that, you know, you're right. We should have been taught, but because of so much power from the meat industry, the dairy industry, all of that thing, all of those things, a lot of it is just not talked about. It's just not, you know, even when you watch like Cowspiracy, you can see how much of it is hidden from, you know, so I had no idea. I had no idea, not even, and you're right. It seems obvious when you read it, you know, how can we possibly be raising billions of animals like this and not having environmental repercussions. But because we're just used to living this way. And again, we don't see, that's the thing. We don't see those factory farms. We don't see the damage it's doing.
They're over there, you know, they're over there. And this is another thing, you know, I mentioned about how we often are quick to forget about what's happened. Do you know what I mean? We're quick to move on and go back, slip back into our old cycle and everything else. And we're also quick to separate ourselves from things that aren't directly impacting us. So I know we're talking very much about obviously the animal industry and everything else, but another key one, which I think is so crucial and important, is around global warming, right? So this is another big thing where if, some places like Calgary is a perfect example. Like really, I could argue that Calgary hasn't really seen a lot of the brunt of what's been going on with global warming, whereas other places have been, having tsunamis and, increased natural disasters. In some ways, Calgary's been a little bit isolated. And because of that, it's easy for us to separate ourselves from those issues that we, that whole kind of like don't see, or what is that, I can't see it.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. And the factory farms are the same. They're kept in these warehouses. So even if you drive past them, they're in a enclosed warehouse. You can't see anything. You don't even know what's in there, right? So
exactly,
it's very out of sight, out of mind. So I think that's an easy one. And the whole environmental thing, like it just makes me really like angry and frustrated. And it's interesting because like I consider like you and me, we're both like, pretty highly educated, both went to university, both pretty open-minded, both, like to investigate and learn about new things and everything else. We have curious minds. And the fact that both of us did not know really the environmental impacts of the animal agriculture until much later in life, it's shocking. You know what I mean? Like
I know.
That's pretty bad.
And we're ruining the environment as we speak, and still it's not talked about enough, why it's happening. And of course, it's not the only thing. Like animal agriculture isn't the only thing, but it is a massive thing. It's one of the top
huge part
contributors, of environmental destruction. Exactly. So on that happy note.
Okay. On that happy note.
Well, you should all watch Cowspiracy if you haven't seen it. Go watch Cowspiracy. If you can, also watch Earthlings. Daniel and I will have a fun little vegan factory farming movie sesh when he gets back. No, but seriously, it's really disturbing, and it's in some ways. It is like a survival mechanism, I guess, to not think about this stuff on a daily basis, because it's very it's very emotionally draining. Yeah, depressing. Yeah. So, I block it out of my, I don't like to watch factory farming footage anymore. I'm already converted. Okay. Yeah. So I actually avoid it, but it's important to know what's happening, because this is happening every single minute of every day.
Exactly.
So
it's a big part of our global world, and it is causing problems everywhere. So it's not just in isolated pockets. So it's just something to,
and now we're all feeling the pandemic. So
exactly, this is
ironic.
It is ironic, and
we're all locked in.
And I just think again, this pandemic is just another reinforcement as to why we shouldn't be consuming animal products. Do you know what I mean? Like and farming them in these conditions and, having these like wet markets and all this kind of stuff. Like, this is a consequence of exactly that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, it'd be crazy.
Hopefully we can learn something from this.
Exactly. Hopefully it'll be a learning experience. I'm not going to hold my breath because I know that, we'll see what happens. But fingers crossed, I want to be optimistic. And hope, globally, this can be kind of a wake up call for everyone and just say, we don't want this to happen again. Because, some of us like to go to bars and go out and do things, Not that that's the most important thing, but you know what I mean?
I just feel bad for those animals, Daniels.
Oh, goddamn. I know.
People be complaining about being stuck in their comfy house with everything they need. And then they wonder why animals be depressed when they be locked up in a cage where they can't move.
Exactly.
So we should not be complaining about being confined in our homes, because animals be going through much worse. So that is the end of that.
That is. So hopefully that kind of gave you guys all, as our listeners, a little insight into mine and Rose's vegan journey, some of the reasoning behind why we've decided to go vegan, and maybe this can inspire other people to, do some research, think about considering going vegan yourself, and watch some good documentaries, get educated on this topic. It is really interesting as well to read about animal rights, find out more about it. So I would suggest diving right in. Also, a little announcement as well. next month we are doing a special episode, which we still haven't figured out what we're going to call it, have we? We're still kind of like figuring out. We were like, maybe like it's basically an advice, a life advice episode.
Column.
An advice column, yeah. So we're asking you guys, our listeners, to get in touch with us if you want. If you have like kind of a life issue or something going on that you don't mind, that you would like us to discuss on the podcast, obviously anonymously, you can just reach out to us either via email, thesavagepodcast@gmail.com, or obviously reach out to us on Instagram message or whatever, whatever's easiest. Caveat that though, that we are not qualified professionals. So this will just be kind of like having a conversation with two friends, and we would kind of discuss how we would approach these situations and what we might do faced with certain circumstances. So hopefully it'll give you guys a little bit of insight and help you make a decision or whatever else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It'll be fun. I'll give you my savage take.
Oh, God damn. And
maybe we'll call it
all
savage
know that Rose
takes.
Can be savage.
So yeah, let us know if you have any issues. Again, we'll keep it anonymous. Just send us a little email, and we want to make this a regular thing because I think it'd be fun. It'd be a way to interact with our audience. So yeah. And if you have any questions for us regarding our vegan story or anything, you can leave it in the YouTube comments if you are listening on YouTube, or of course our lovely patrons, you can leave it in Patreon. And wow, we talked for a long time, Daniel. God damn. Sorry, I took up like 80% of this session.
Yeah, but I also think because like for reasons mentioned before, is your particular journey in finding veganism and everything else, it's been a longer story arc just because you did it. You were the pioneer, Rose. You were like the first one that settled the vegan plantation, and I came a little bit later on the train.
I'll be the pioneer. This is why I think it's so important to, who you surround yourself with. It makes such a big difference.
100%.
And even like if I didn't go to London, who knows if I would have gone vegan? These little things make differences that you don't even realize.
Yeah, I think one thing that's like really important to me, and again, I echo that, is like make sure like, or try to as best you can, but surround yourself with positive people that are one of the key things to all of my friendships is every single one of my friends, although very different individuals, all of them share in common that they're, really positive people and also very open-minded. So, I love having these kind of debates and talking to my friends about different things. And those are the people that I want to surround myself with, because it challenges me.
You think I'd be positive? You think I'd be positive and open-minded?
Sorry, did I say all of my friends? I meant all of them except Rose are positive.
I'd be glasses half empty.
Oh, God damn. I'll be bringing that positive sunshine to Rose's life, That's why she's friends with me.
It'd be true as hell. I'll be the devil bringing Daniel back down to hell.
Oh, no, you're like you're the person that I need in my life that like brings me back down to reality when I'm kind of floating a little bit too high in the clouds.
You down too.
You're like grab me by my legs and pull me back down. Say, get your ass down here, Daniel. Let's have a conversation. And I'm like, okay. It's true.
Anyways, God. That was fun. We should talk about veganism more.
I know. I definitely think we should. Well, we will in some future episodes because we've epically failed at the vegan nugget. So I think our listeners are entitled to a few vegan episodes because of our failure in that. Yeah.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for listening. Make sure you check us out on Patreon for some extra episodes. We've got a few there now. www.patreon.com/thesavagepodcast. And of course, we're also on youtube.com/savagepodcast. We're also on Instagram, The Savage Podcast. So follow us, interact with us. We love you all.
Yeah. And have a great week much. And take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Go vegan.